Welcome to Construction Genius, and it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show Walt Stahl, the president of the Stahl Companies, a construction management company out of Sacramento, California, working with healthcare organizations throughout the state of California. And on today's show, Walt and I have a very interesting discussion about how he made the decision way back in 2000 to leave a cushy, secure position with the state of California to launch out into the entrepreneurial waters and start his own company. So enjoy the interview here with Walt today. Feel free to give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, ericanderton.com. I deeply appreciate you listening to the show and sharing it with other people, and enjoy my interview with Walt. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Walt, it's a pleasure to have you on Construction Genius here today. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure, Eric.
Right now, we're at the beginning of 2020, and Walt, 20 years ago, you made kind of an unusual decision to leave a very secure, prestigious job with the state of California and to embark on your own entrepreneurial journey. What led you to do that back in, it was about 2000, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it's interesting. Before I answer that, I've had a lot of folks, a lot of friends, a lot of peers since leaving saying, you know, Walt, you could have stayed there and done nothing for the next 20 years if you wanted to. And that in itself is somewhat of the answer, right? I could have stayed there and done very little and had a career. I chose to further my education, seek my master's degree in public administration, thinking that I might change departments but stay in government. For reasons of economic reasons, I chose to leave the state. And as a result of that, I put the word out to clients that I was thinking about leaving.
Now, which clients were you putting the word out to? When you say clients, who are you talking about?
Well, so let me start off by saying I was working for the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, OSHPD, which is the agency that regulates healthcare construction in the state of California. So the clients that I'm referring to would be healthcare facility owners or their representatives, contractors, architects, and engineers.
Okay, so you were at the state, you had paid your way through to get your MBA. You were going back to them and saying, hey, can you guys reimburse this for me because it'll benefit you guys? They were like, I don't think so. And that began to get you thinking about starting your own gig.
It was an MPA, public administration. It was an expensive program.
Right.
And I realized that I was going to be paying for this program for quite some time if I had to do it on my own. So I was a bit disappointed when I found out that the department that I had worked for the previous 15 years was unwilling to assist me in investing in that educational program and allowing me then to return the investment in their program.
Okay, so you began by putting out some feelers to clients just to see if there would be any interest in them working with you in what sort of capacity?
Well, I just put the feelers out that I was thinking about leaving. And so I had folks calling me up, asking me if I would be interested in consulting for them on a level of OSHPD-related problem solving.
Okay.
So it could have been for, again, any entity, owner, contractor, architect, but it was more problem solving related to the OSHPD process itself.
Well, so what were some of the biggest problems that they were coming to you for? When a problem came up, what made them think about you?
When I worked for OSHPD, and there are many who still do, and I believe have common sense and have a way of drilling down and solving problems fairly quickly and fairly easily. So when people would come to me while I was the chief compliance officer, I believe I did that for them. When I left OSHPD, the challenges were still there with them and OSHPD. Challenges of time, challenges of money, challenges of a lack of clarity in process and programs. And so I think that I lent to clarity of those processes and programs that solved some of the time and money issues.
That's interesting. So you were a resource to help guide them through the various state compliance requirements so that they could get their projects built in the most efficient and profitable way possible?
Yes, 20 years ago, Eric, the processes and programs weren't as well defined as they are today. People still need help even today. But 20 years later, Oshpod has done a good job of developing some of those programs. But in the early days, it was very difficult. There were no guidelines, there were no instructions, no procedures, and everybody found it very difficult to navigate that Oshpod process.
Can you remember the day that you decided, okay, I'm no longer taking the state paycheck, and now I am hanging out my shingle, the Stahl Companies, I'm ready to rock and roll? Do you remember that day?
I do, very vividly.
Well, tell me about it.
So I had put out that I was considering consulting and received multiple interest. I elected to go with Sutter Health.
Interesting.
Sutter Health asked me because the seismic compliance issue was just rearing its ugly head. And so Sutter Health, with all the number of facilities in Northern California, had asked me if I would be interested in kind of spearheading and working with them on managing projects related to the seismic compliance program.
That's because here in Northern California, we get lots of earthquakes, particularly in the Bay Area.
Correct.
Yep.
So I took that challenge on. I came on board with Sutter Health and proceeded to work with the various facilities throughout the Bay Area.
So at that point, were you just viewing yourself as an individual independent consultant working for Sutter?
That's exactly what I was doing because, I was there for a year. And after that year's period of time, they came to me and said, hey, Walt, you're going to have to make a decision. You're either going to have to come on board as an employee or you're going to have to leave because we just can't keep you as a consultant with California laws being what they were. We can't keep you as a consultant forever.
Now, that's interesting. So then let's talk us through that. So just a year before, you'd made the pivot from the secure state government job into a independent consultant, working obviously for a very reputable organization. And then you had another pivot point just a year later. What made you pivot one way as opposed to the other?
Well, during that year with Sutter Health, I had multiple opportunities and clients coming to me after hearing that I had left Oshpod, asking for help with their particular project. So while I was helping Sutter manage the seismic compliance, I had several other clients that were asking me to manage projects for them as well, which is what really introduced me into the project management world post Oshpod.
So is that how you began to sort of morph from a consultant into more of a construction management type role?
Exactly. So I left Sutter Health, and shortly thereafter, Dignity Health asked me to manage a program for them. It was a heart center at Mercy General Hospital.
Okay.
And so I took that job on as the project manager, quickly realizing that I was going to need some help. And that was the beginning of hiring my first employee.
Interesting. So your first employee, what role did you have for that first employee?
Great question. I thought I needed an assistant project manager. I was informed by my CPA because I had surrounded myself with a CPA and with some legal folks. And my CPA said, well, you may need administrative support. So what I did was I hired a young lady who came to work with me and helped administer my program, my new profession, if you will. It allowed me the ease of focusing on the construction. She's been with me all these years later.
Oh, interesting. So your first employee is still with you today?
That's correct.
That's fascinating. So as you're moving into this more project management role, I just want to back up actually, because it didn't sound like you started your company with this grand plan to build a massive organization and conquer the world kind of thing.
That's right.
It sounds more like you understood that you could help people solve a particular problem, and you found a match or a relationship where they wanted you to help them with that particular issue, and then you just grew it from there. That's
right. There are days where sometimes I think I would love to go back where it's just myself and that client, but I got to admit, I love the idea of having, a team of people around with me as well.
That's interesting. A couple of questions. So your first employee is still with you 20 years later, which I've got to say is pretty remarkable. Why do you think they're still with you?
Well, one of the things that I've always prided myself on, Eric, is treating people fairly. One of the greatest compliments that I ever received was when I hired this young lady, because the people that were around her said, there's one thing you can be sure of. Walt will always take care of you.
Interesting.
And And to this day, I was able to help her complete her education. She worked hard for it. I just gave her some assistance. And she has just been a wealth of knowledge and help for me here on the administrative side of things. She's now my CFO. So that really has paid off very well.
So that's an interesting thing. So when you were working for the state, they came back to you and weren't really willing to help you with your education. Am I right in saying that you've been willing to help your employees with some of their educational development?
We have a great educational development program, Eric, here at the Stahl Companies. We have helped several employees go back to school either for their undergraduate, even their master's, or just starting a junior college. We have a program that reimburses them for their education.
So then I'm just hearing in the back of my mind some construction company owners saying, "Walt, that's great, but what if they take my education and then bail on me?"
Well, there's a great commercial out there that says, the fear of hiring somebody and training them and teaching them, having them leave. But the greater fear is not doing that and having them stay, right? So,
yeah, that's a good one right there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So as you began to grow the company, you've hired your first employee, you're shifting into this more project management role. What were some of the biggest challenges that you began to face right away that were a real threat to you?
Working for a state agency, the people on the outside looking in think that you know everything there is to know about their business.
Right.
What really comes to be known as truthful is when you're in their business and you don't have a clue about what they're doing, right? So my point is that when I left Oshpod, I understood the regulatory part of the process and how it related to their needs and to their goals. When I got into their world, I learned real quickly how much frustration there was working with the state agencies, but it took me a while to understand the challenges that these owners face with their particular projects, specifically on the funding side, developing business plans for their projects. And then obviously, and most importantly, is delivering a project in a timely fashion on schedule or within budget, which is very difficult to do in California.
So that's interesting because you didn't come from a construction background, but here you find yourself responsible for budget and for schedule. What did you focus on to help get your arms around sort of the blocking and tackling of the construction process, dealing with the schedules, dealing with the owners, dealing with the regulations? What did you really focus on to get competent in those areas?
Well, dealing with the people part of it, Eric, came a little bit more naturally for me because I really got to say that I've been trained and taught through working with people that were far more my senior in the world, in my previous world, from my days in the military through my days in private practice and then in government with Oshpod. But with regards to, as you put it, the blocking and tackling, the scheduling, the budgeting, I remember my dad one time saying, those are the kinds of things you have to go home at night and really learn, really understand, really study. And it did take a lot of that for me to really understand. It's one thing to put a schedule together, but it's another thing to understand the nuances, the milestones of those schedules and budgets as well, contingencies, shifting of dollars, moving money. Those are things that were foreign to me. And so it took a lot of study and research on my part to understand that.
Did you have any mentors or anyone who you could go to for advice that helped you through this process?
I did actually. Unfortunately, they have since passed, but I had a couple of mentors in the world. I had worked for Rockwell International for a while when I got out of the military.
Rockwell International?
Rockwell International, a mechanical engineer who was a great mentor of mine. I also had an individual in my first hospital job at Desert Hospital in Palm Springs. So I was able to look back on those experiences, which was well prior to my time at Oshpod. But then afterwards and leaving, my current mentors that I have now are design professionals, are general contractors, and quite frankly, are even some owners, people that I work with and work for, that I serve right now, servicing them. They are teaching me, they are mentoring me, and I'd like to think that it's paid off.
So that's interesting. Did you find that the people that you were working for, because of their relationships with you, were willing to help you through some of the learning process that you had?
I know that to be true because I made it known to them, and I wanted them to be clear that their investment was going to be returned.
Right.
There are so many times where people want to invest in individuals, but the individuals just don't seem to want to return it.
Right.
For whatever reason. I was grateful for it, and I'd like to think that I have returned it.
So you've chosen in terms of an overall strategy to focus mainly in the healthcare field. Is that right?
That's correct.
What do you think the benefits of having that strategic focus, that niche focus, have been?
It's interesting because I didn't necessarily go into it with that plan, kind of backed into it because of my time with Oshpod, but it really became the best decision was, it became obvious during the economic downturn, 2008 through 2012, when the economy took a nosedive and healthcare continued to, I don't want to say thrive, but continued to do well.
Right.
It dawned on me at that time that niche, healthcare, regardless of the conditions of the economy, are going to continue to be needed, right? Infrastructure, equipment, technology, and most importantly, the people to do that. And so I invested, I took a chance, and it's paid off in investing in that particular niche.
So that's interesting. So the insight I'm getting from that is when you are picking a niche, is to look for those areas that perhaps are resistant to some extent to the economic cycles.
Yeah, I know a little bit about schools, and I understand how schools work. And schools are affected by economy. Certainly, commercial is affected by economy. Healthcare, not as much, if you will, that particular sector, considering that it's a large part of the country GDP. I mean, it's here to stay.
How did that decision to focus on that one specific niche of healthcare, how did that affect or impact the growth of your company?
Well, that's a great question, because when as I mentioned, I brought my first employee on board. She had previous experience with Sutter Health. I have not always had the fortunate opportunities to bring people on board with healthcare experience. Although many of them do have it, what I have realized is I've had to train some of those folks. That probably has been some of the greater challenges. But in healthcare, there's quite a bit of growth opportunity, right? To not just anybody can do this stuff. So if they're interested, there's a lot of opportunity for growth.
That's interesting. So what have been some of the challenges of picking that niche? I think you kind of alluded to one there, just finding talent who are experienced in healthcare. What are some of the other challenges?
Well, and it's related, right? Because those challenges are related to the regulatory process. Working with government agencies as opposed to local municipalities, if you will, understanding not just the building codes, but the health and safety laws requires a different kind of person. Because a lot of people want to just get in there and to use a cliche, blow and go. It's a little bit more methodical, a little bit more a thinking person's industry than it is commercial construction.
So that's interesting in terms of who you hire, because you're looking for someone who not only has construction experience or perhaps the technical expertise, but has the right demeanor or the right attitude for the particular niche that you've chosen.
So if I could jump 20 years forward, my entire team currently, we emphasize Patrick Lencioni is the table group's the ideal team player.
Interesting.
And the ideal team player has three attributes, right? It has hungry, it has humble, and it has smart. And so I wish I would have read that book or understood that concept a long time ago. So the people that we have here at Stahl Companies are hungry, they're smart, and they have a humility about them. Those are the attributes we look for in the people that we hire.
All right, so let's talk about that, because that's interesting. So hunger, that's a universal thing that we all experience, right? I just had a lunch. I'm not hungry right now. But what do you mean when you're looking for someone who's hungry? What does that mean to you?
Well, as for people, hunger, like thirst, if you will, is a metaphor for wanting to do more, to look more opportunities, more ways to prove themselves. So it's not just a matter of, I got an 8-hour day, I'm going to work 10 hours a day. It's a matter of, I got an 8-hour day and I'm going to do the best I can in those 8 hours. And so we have people that are hungry for knowledge, for wisdom, for mentoring, for opportunities. And very few have that hunger and return on that investment, as I was speaking to earlier. But those that do certainly are very valuable people to their organizations.
I just thought about you when you were working for the state. It seems like you had a hunger yourself there. Number one, to further your education, and then drove you to perhaps a hunger to be recognized for that, or to perhaps leverage that with your own company.
Yeah, that's true, Eric. And I think that everybody, there's an inherent part in every person that wants to see how far, how fast they can go. And some people don't go very far nor very fast. There's others that want to push that envelope a little bit further, a little bit harder, a little bit more. I'd like to think that I fall into that category.
How do you spot someone who's hungry?
That's a great question. You got to look at a little bit of history, obviously, right? In terms of talking with them about what they've done in the past, about the culture with which they grew up in. I think that's important. I mean, to look at somebody and to try to understand their character and understand that you don't want just a warm body. There's depth to people that with the right questions, a little bit more time. Our interviews are not 1 hour, hire or fire. Our interviews are over a period of days or weeks, taking them to job sites, seeing how they react to people. Because I'm a firm believer that the hiring practice and the hiring process is the most important thing in an organization.
So let me ask you that then. You use the word culture. Have you seen in your experience that when you say culture, do you mean their socioeconomic background, their family culture? What do you mean by that?
Yes, I mean all of that, right? That whole package that they bring to the office, economically, socially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and not one of those are less important than the other. I think they're all contributors towards the culture of the Stahl Companies.
Okay. Have you seen one particular background or set of life experiences that has equated to more success in terms of that hunger piece in your organization?
I can say yes. I hope that I could answer this question correctly, but that individual who has been raised in a surrounding of humility, commitment, hardworking, respect, professional, those are the people that thrive. Those are the people that succeed. There are those that we've brought on board that have been good contributors who have lacked some of those soft skills, and they're not here.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So we talked about the hunger piece, and it's interesting because on the one hand, it's easy to define, but on the other hand, it's something that you have to explore. What do you mean by humility? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not sure humility and construction always go together.
That's a great point, because some of the best contractors are some of the strongest personalities and, quite frankly, a little bit arrogance on their part, right?
A little bit sometimes.
Still have a level of arrogance and a level of know-it-all, if you will, with a level of humility. And I think that humility, the way I would describe it, would be one that is combined with respect and professionalism. It's understanding that I'm good at what I do, and somebody else might be good at what they do, but I'm not better than them. And so therefore, I'm going to treat them with respect and professionally speaking, I'm going to treat them with the professional respect that they deserve. They could be better than me. I could be better than them, but we're both good.
Interesting. And so that's why you would take someone during the interview process out to a job site to see how they interact with folks?
Exactly. Yeah. It's been interesting to see how some of these people that I bring onto my team that have experience react versus those that have no experience react, because the character issues, the character flaws, if there are any, are revealed when one lacks experience or when one has a level of arrogance or too much that thinks they know better, right? It begins to reveal itself. And I'll take that true person any day over that person that is carrying some false baggage and hiding it quite well.
So that's interesting, because that speaks to, on the one hand, you need someone who has at least a degree of technical understanding depending on the role itself. But then it sounds like what you're saying is that you would rather hire for the character and train for the position as opposed to hire for the position and hope for the character.
Eric, if you were to look at my team, you could possibly cut it right down the middle. I have a great team of people, and many of them are young men and women that came here with no healthcare experience, but are thriving because I saw that character, I saw that humility, and fortunately for me, my leadership saw it as well, and we took a chance and invested on people, and they have returned on that investment. So yeah, you could probably split it right down the middle in our company, but I got to say that right now we got a great team of people, those that know it and those that are learning it.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So that's interesting to have a team of people who share a common set of values, and even if there's a degree of difference in terms of the experience, there's at least that space that they can all get into in order to learn what they need to learn.
Correct.
So what about this? Go ahead.
No, I'm saying we're going through that right now. As a matter of fact, we're readdressing our strategic plan and our values, and we're making sure that our team is addressing, investing in the values in everything that we do daily here in the office.
So what about this idea of SMART? What do you mean when you say SMART?
That's a great question, because oftentimes people think, well, education, formal education, and that's the furthest thing from the truth, though that certainly is a contributor as well. I like to describe SMART, and I'll paraphrase what the book says, but I like to describe SMART as that individual that's smart enough to know how to speak with the C-suite level folks, but at the same time, they're out on the construction site speaking with laborers and the likes, and able to carry a conversation that has, again, mutual respect and that level of intelligence that respects the person they're talking to and with.
That's interesting. So it's not just an ability to grasp the technical aspects, but it's an emotional intelligence that enables someone to bridge gaps between different types of folks in different situations.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, Eric.
So I think what's interesting about that too is one of the challenges that I find a lot of people have in construction is understanding their audience and being able to adapt their conversational style and the way they structure their messages to the audience that they're addressing.
That requires talent, right? It's not everybody can do that. Again, I think that is an attribute that would fall under the SMART category, understanding your audience, being able to relate and to convey.
Yep. So it's interesting to me because one of the ways I see that a lot of times is like you'll have a really talented project manager who obviously is being evaluated based on how a particular project is going. And if they feel they're not getting the resources or attention that they need in that project, they can often struggle with it. And so they bring it up to upper management, and upper management has a bigger picture perspective that perhaps the project manager doesn't see, but they need to be able to, the project manager needs to be able to put themselves in upper management's shoes in order to understand why resources are being allocated in the way they are.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would take a slightly different approach on that, in that our project managers are visited by our senior folks, right? Rather than waiting for our project managers to come to them, our leadership will invest time in their projects, sit there and listen and watch how they react and relate. And more importantly, when those senior and leadership individuals have the opportunity to speak with the leadership or the C-suites in their project-related facilities, we like to bring our project managers into those situations so that they can get firsthand knowledge and see and understand and thrive and do well.
So right there is a great insight, is for your senior leaders to bring in your PMs into the C-suite so they can observe, they can see how your senior leaders interact, they can learn from observation as well as perhaps from doing some of the interaction themselves.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, that's great. That's terrific. So shifting the conversation a little bit, Stahl Companies is a construction manager. How do you deal with the fact that you're sort of between two worlds? You know, you're between the owner, the construction, the general contractor, the subs. How do you guys sit in that world and bring value in the day-to-day interactions that you have?
You know, that is a great question, because when the owners ask us, well, what value do you bring? Well, we represent the owners. Clearly, first and foremost, general contractors do not represent the owners. They certainly are delivering a product to the owners, but they don't necessarily represent the owners. We want to make sure that those owners get everything that they're paying for. But here's a very important part also. Subcontractors, when you're talking about construction, the question sometimes is asked, does the general contractor have more allegiance to the owner that they're serving or to the subcontractors that work for them? And oftentimes the correct answer is to the subcontractors that work for them, because they're relying upon them for other projects. The reason I bring this up is that as an owner's representative, we have to be able to bridge that relationship and understand the relationship that the general contractor not only has with the owner and making sure that we're fair to both parties, but understanding the relationship that the general contractor has to their subcontractors as well.
So then you don't have to give me a specific example. You can But give me an example of what you mean by that. How is that played out where you're in a situation where you're working with a general and you know that there's issues going on related to their subs that are affecting the owner that you represent? How do you play in that situation?
Well, I guess the word that I would use is change orders, obviously, but let's just say a framing contractor who's a major subcontractor.
Yep.
Has a change order that is going to be costly to the owner. Going back to my statement earlier, that general contractor realizes that he or she has to take care of that subcontractor because they're going to be working together on far more projects in the future than that general is going to work with the owner. But at the same time, that owner that contractor general has to respect that owner and the process related to that change order. And we have to be that individual that looks at it fairly, right? We're not necessarily going in there with a popularity contest,
right?
But we are going to be fair, and the people are going to respect our decisions as a result of that.
So what do you do when you know your owner, for lack of a better word, is full of it and the GC is right? How do you handle that?
That's why we like to only work with clients of choice. I refer to them as clients of choice. Sometimes they are not clients of choice. And we do have to, listen, Eric, when a general contractor is right, the general contractor is right. And when we're representing the owner, we have put ourselves in position such that the owner was not happy with it, but the owner was informed and made the correct decision. It's not always, as I said, it's not always a popularity contest, but I like to think that the clients that we work with, because they are clients of choice, we have very few of those bad owners that we have to deal with.
Okay, so that then speaks to another key aspect of strategy. We began earlier on, we were talking about choosing the healthcare niche, but you not only have to choose a product niche, you have to be able to identify those owners of choice, as you've put it, so that you're not encumbering yourself with too many hassles because you're working with crappy owners.
That's exactly correct, because in our 20 years, I can say that we have walked away from 3 clients because of the relationship or the lack of relationship between that client or owner and ourselves.
Interesting.
We thought it would be best if we parted ways. And that's not always an easy thing to do because they could be part of a bigger organization.
Yes.
Nonetheless, we have done that. And it's not that I'm proud of it, but as I said, 3 times in the last 20 years is pretty good.
Let me ask you the question then about that, just because you touched on a couple of things that are interesting. Number one, you're working in a healthcare system with perhaps one owner that is part of a larger system. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
And has there ever been a situation where you say, this part of the system we're not going to work with, but we will work with other parts of the system?
Yeah, and quite frankly, it's becoming, I don't want to say easier to do, but maybe easier to distinguish, because in these large systems, you're working with corporate levels and you're working with facility levels.
Yep.
But they're still the same system.
Yep.
So there's opportunities to channel your relationships with folks on projects that keep you with the system, but maybe not necessarily with some of those individuals.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's an insight there. You have to pick. It's not necessarily just the larger entity, but it may just be the individuals within the entity.
Yes.
So what about with the people that you've decided to walk away from? What was the internal process in your organization that you went through to be able to say, you know what, these folks, we're not going to work with them anymore?
I guess when my team sees me underneath my desk in the fetal position crying, they realize that I'm done with that particular.
There you go.
Eric,
so watch for Walt under his desk.
We bring it back to the team and we sit down and we talk amongst the leadership here, understanding what the potential ramifications are of walking away. But we then, once we agree as a team, we then have that interaction or that meeting with the client, and we explain to them why we're parting ways. And in those 3 instances that I mentioned earlier, 2 of them went very well, and the client understood.
Right.
One of them, the client was very upset and didn't understand, which supported more so our reason for leaving.
So that's interesting that you would actually take the time to go to the client and discuss it, as opposed to saying, just ghosting them or something like that.
Yeah, and we've had clients that have come to us for reasons not because of our work product, but for reasons because of internal decisions, who have said, look, we have to part ways because we're bringing internal folks. and they pay us the respect of coming and sitting down with us and explaining it. There's no reason why we shouldn't do the same thing.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. So as we wrap up this interview here today, Walt, you've been on a 20-year run. If you could do it all over again, knowing what you know now, what are one or two things that you would have done differently?
If I had the experience, the knowledge, the wisdom, I probably would have come into the program with partnerships right off the start than carrying the load myself. That probably
business partners?
Yes, business partners.
Okay.
That probably is a big one.
Why do you say that?
Well, because there's a lot of responsibility, and there is in the construction management world compared to general contracting, there's far less risk and far more reward, but there is risk nonetheless. And I would say that, and I'm learning this 20 years later, that it would be better to share the risk with confidants that you have alongside you than it is to carry that alone.
Interesting.
But let me also say that it's probably a lot funner to share the rewards also, right?
Yeah.
Which we do with our team. So, I don't know a second one. That's one that I always focus on. What else I would do differently? I wouldn't change healthcare for the world. I love healthcare, and I think it's the most challenging. If you can build a hospital, you can build anything.
Interesting.
24/7 operation. The people, I can't think, Eric, other than that, how I do it differently.
So let me ask you this, because it sounded like, and if I'm wrong here, just correct me, it sounded like at the beginning, it was sort of an organic process where you started as a consultant, became a project manager, grew it into a construction management company. And now from what you were saying, you're more intentional in terms of your strategic planning and things like that?
Yes.
If you had to do it all over again, would you go back and be a little more intentional, or were you just okay with the way it grew organically?
No, yeah, I guess you're right. I think that I would be more strategic, more intentional, planned it better. Maybe, everybody always tells me that the best way to start in business is with an exit plan.
Yeah.
And I probably would have developed an exit strategy with a timeline and such, had I known better. But I think we did pretty good. And by the grace of God, we've survived 20 years and we've done well.
That's awesome. So just as we wrap up here, what are two or three, if you were sitting down with someone, you're having a coffee or, a beer or something, and you were sitting down with someone who's just starting their company, whether it be construction management or even general contracting, what are two or three words of advice you would give to them?
Well, certainly the most important advice I would give to somebody would be the people part of it.
Okay.
Is really invest heavily in the type of people you're going to bring on board. Understand the people you're bringing on board. I think that's first and foremost. You used the word intentionality. Be intentional about what you're going to do. Because oftentimes people want to build, but they're not quite sure. People have asked me, do you want to do schools? Do you want to do commercial? Do you want to do whatever? And I've been very intentional about healthcare. So I would say know what you want to do and do that well. Have the right people to do that with. And certainly there's got to be some economic level of support, right? Finances got to be in place. So I would say that those would be the most important things.
And when you say that the finances in place, you mean get your ducks in a row financially so that you have some runway when you're starting up?
Exactly. Because if you're on the edge, you're threatening your personal lifestyle while developing your professional lifestyle.
Yeah, that's great. So those three pieces of advice: number one, pick a niche. Number two, pick the right people to help you with the growth of the company. And number three, have your financial house in order.
Yes.
That's excellent. Okay, well, I've got one final question to ask. I like to ask my guests this. What is your favorite restaurant?
Well, actually, it's not there anymore in Sacramento, but it was Bandera's.
Yeah, dude, you're the second person who said Banderas. And I know it's not there anymore, down there on Fair Oaks and Howe,
exactly. Right? They're still down at Newport Beach, but Bandera's by far was the place to hang out for my wife and I.
Did you like the ribs there?
You know what? I liked it all, but I tell you what I really liked was that the bread that they brought you.
Oh, nice.
With the jalapeno peppers in there, a little bit, the cornbread. I love that with a nice glass of red wine.
There you go.
Hey, steak, chicken, ribs, couldn't go wrong.
So just for the record here, Banderas is no longer in Sacramento. If anyone from Banderas is listening, you all got to open up again here. But I guess they're still in Newport Beach.
Yes, there is.
All right. So if you're down in SoCal and you want a good American classic place to eat, Banderas is the place to go.
You got it.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today. I know this interview has been extremely enlightening to me, and I know it'll be helpful to the folks who listen to it.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity, and to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.